Back by popular demand after a, busy spring from my new home office. It's time for another Big 12 breakdown. And John, I do have to apologize for being absent for so long on this.
Well, no need to apologize. Don't bury the lead. When you say new home office, it's new home,
New
right?
home, yes,
Yes.
yes.
So
The
congratulations on that. That's great.
Thank you. My wife and I sold our house up near Belton. We moved down to Gerald. We were so far west in Bell County that my drive to work and to the Baylor campus stayed the same. And her drive to work got like 20 minutes shorter, and we're so much closer to my family now that they've day tripped up here several times since we closed on the new house. And you can see still getting settled in a little bit, some of the decorations here in the back and some of the awards that I've been fortunate to be blessed with. And then I won't tell you what game this panoramic is from because I don't think you want to know.
Gotcha.
And I think it's the touchdown right after the Bryce Petty turf monster too.
I was there. Cold night.
That was
for Oklahoma State fans.
That was the semester I was in the band, so that was a fun night. But yeah, it's been a busy spring. So 2 moves because we had to do a little bit at my mother-in-law's in Pflugerville. So that was a 3-week stretch of a really long commute. And I'm happy with where it wound up. Happy to be in a new home in a nice neighborhood, and happy to be back here with you, my friend.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it. We got a lot to talk about, don't we?
We do. It is the first week of the NCAA softball tournament. There are 3 Big 12 teams hosting regionals and one that is a 2 seed that was just on the cusp. If you look at the region they got put into, they got a good draw, all things considered, because remember, you can't have SEC schools in regionals with other SEC schools. Texas is hosting as a 13 seed, so that sweep by Baylor of Texas knocked Texas from a top 8, from a national seed down to 13. And then you have 2 in the top, 6? Oklahoma State, I think, is the 6th national seed. And then, of course, your number 1 overall is the Oklahoma Sooners, the reigning national champion and one of the biggest dynasties in the sport. John, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to start with the brutal draw of a region that Baylor got, but when you just look at the teams that are in it, which is funny to say after just saying they got a pretty decent one, all things considered. Or do you want to start with at the top with Oklahoma?
Let's start at the top. How about that? Oklahoma, unbelievable. The number's 43 wins in a row now. It's a new school record. It is how far away from the NCAA record?
Oh man,
consecutive wins.
It's close.
I saw that. I think I'll double check. I think they're 4 or 5 wins away from the NCAA record, and 51-1, gaudy record. Last year they were 59-3, and you think, oh my gosh, how would you ever do a record that good?
Right,
or close to it. And they're 51-1 right now.
51-1, of course, we've talked about on 6 News, and I know that you've talked about it on the Big 12 update on 6 News. That one is to Baylor back at the Getterman Classic. That was a long time ago, man. That was almost 3 months to the day from when we're recording this Wednesday afternoon. Yeah. In the Norman Regional, Hofstra, Cal, and Missouri. Look, OU has lost that 1-4 opener in the regional before and still won the national championship. It was either last year or the year before that happened. I want to say it was North Dakota State that beat them. But I'm not worried about Norman, about that Norman regional. I think it's OU's to lose. And to me, yeah, that record, we're talking, they could get it if we see Hofstra come out and catch them looking more at that Cal Missouri game in the second game. Or it could be just broken in the super regionals. But if they get to Oklahoma City, they will have broken the record, I do believe.
Yeah, I just looked it up. They're 4 away from tying Arizona. Arizona 96-97 team won 47 games in a row. So that's the all-time record. So they're within 4 of tying that record.
That's massive.
What
are your thoughts on this Norman Regional besides the fact that OU could break the record?
Just how dominant they are, and that they don't have to leave town. They would host the regional, they'd host the super regional, then they'd go to USA Softball Hall of Fame Stadium. That's huge, I think. Nobody else has that kind of advantage. Oklahoma State is close, but Oklahoma, no school like Oklahoma has that kind of advantage. and they are just so good. I mean, I enjoy listening to people who have seen Oklahoma through the years and can kind of put it in perspective, like how good is this team compared to Jocelyn and Allo's teams and things like that. And they say this team is right up there at the top, which is saying a lot.
So back in February, Baylor played Oklahoma February 19th. On February 18th, I had the ESPN Plus call for Baylor and Longwood. And so as part of my research for that game, on top of the fact that I needed to shoot highlights for the Baylor game against Stephen F. Austin that afternoon, which I believe was Dariana Orm's perfect game in that Getterman Classic, I went in early and I watched Longwood take on Oklahoma and took notes during the game. I think by the end of the third inning, I just stopped taking notes because they got Oklahoma'd. This OU team, yeah, those Jocelyn Allo teams were great, and I'm not going to sit here and compare. Of the two of us in my home, I am not the softball expert. That would be my wife who played the game. But that OU team was just as good as any other that I have seen in my time covering the Big 12 Conference. Truly.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, they've got it all. I mean, it's kind of stating the obvious, but they've got it all: pitching, hitting, defense, depth, pitching depth. I mean, they've got it all. So that's how you get to 51-1.
It really is. Let's go about an hour and a half up the road from Norman to Stillwater, Oklahoma. That is the number 6 national seed, Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Wichita State, and UMBC in the Stillwater Regional. The Norman Regional paired with the Clemson one, which is Clemson, Auburn, North Carolina, Greensboro, and Cal State Fullerton. This Stillwater one, which again has 2 power conference teams and then a dangerous Wichita State program, is paired with the Arkansas Regional at Fayetteville. So a lot of regionality here. This one spells danger to me for Oklahoma State because they've already lost to Wichita State once this season. They have not been playing well as of late. It's kind of similar to Baylor, kind of up and down during the season. The highs were really high, but those lows were really low. Lost their opener in the Big 12 Conference Tournament to Kansas. First time Kansas had won a game in Oklahoma City or in the conference tournament since 2007. Now, part of that is there wasn't a tournament for a long while there. But this spells danger for Oklahoma State, at least to me.
Were you surprised that they were a number 6 national seed?
I think that they were so dominant in the non-conference part of the season. Yeah. I think they were up to number 2 at one point right after Baylor beat Oklahoma. So it was Oklahoma State 1-2. Right. They hung out in the top 5 most of the year. Their non-conference part of the season, I think, vaulted them up to 6. I was fully expecting them to drop to 8 or maybe even 9 at that point. But I think they got this because of the brand that Kenny Gajewski has built in his, he got there my senior year. So let me do some math. 8 years in Stillwater. The fact that he's made the Women's College World Series, 4 straight years that it's happened.
I was a little surprised just because they're in such a tailspin right now. They've lost 11 of their last 13. That's pretty significant down the stretch, but it does show the strength of the league, I think, and the strength of Oklahoma State that they held on for a number 6 national seed.
And that's a totally fair response. I think that, like I said, there was the reputation that they gave Gajewski for what he's done, especially the past 5 seasons. And it was that non-conference part. Would not have been, even as an alum, would not have been surprised to see them drop to, 8, 9, as far as 12, maybe. But I think that non-conference part was just really good. Are you worried about them getting beat twice in this regional? Is this the year that OSU's streak of trips to the World Series ends?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they're really good. They are really good, but they've lost 11 of their last 13. So what's going on in Stillwater right now, to change the mindset, change their momentum back the other way? I think you got to have something to get things turned back in the right direction.
I would agree with you there. Curious what winds up happening here. That one, they're going to open with UMBC. That is 4:00 Eastern time, so 3:00 here. on Friday on ESPN Plus. That's going to be an interesting one to follow. But if the Cowgirls can beat UMBC in that opener, man, whoever wins that late game in that regional, Wichita State and Nebraska, that's a dangerous matchup in that second round. So that is the most interesting regional of the Big 12, of the three teams from the Big 12 that are hosting. The third one, number 13 Texas, in the Austin regional down at McCombs Field, Texas Seton Hall, Texas State, and Texas A&M. So three teams from less than 2.5 hours away. I'm trying to remember what that drive is from Austin to College Station, because you got one from 30 minutes down the road. You got A&M coming in, then you got Seton Hall flying into a different time zone. Is there any history between Texas and Texas A&M at all?
Maybe. I think yeah, they used to be in the same conference. You remember that?
So, I think so. That it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. But I think that's great. I think that's pretty good drama to have them in the same regional. And you saw the reaction of UT when they were the number 13 seed, right?
I did not.
Oh, it was like almost dead silence. Like, okay. So they weren't real excited about it being a number 13 seed. But they better turn it on, because they're in for some tough games there.
Well, I mean, but their season was a whole lot of this, kind of like we talked about with Oklahoma State and with Baylor. The highs are really high, the lows are really low. That series against Baylor, they were bad. Now, part of it, Baylor dominated that series.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of the schools in the Big 12, it is easy to get up for Texas. That said, you can't get run ruled in your own barn. You got walked off in another game, and you got handled in the third. What do you like? I don't understand. Like, you dropped. You were flirting with a national seed. Right. You dropped because of that sweep, and then you just beat teams you were supposed to beat in Oklahoma City, and you lost to a team you were supposed to lose to. So you met expectations at the Big 12 tournament. You didn't do it in the final week or two there, because didn't they drop a game to Texas Tech too, I believe, in that final stretch?
I don't remember that.
I could be wrong. Been wrong before. But that last week getting swept by Baylor, I think really hurt Texas here. Look, the dark horse in this regional, it's not A&M to me. It's Texas State.
Texas State, right?
That's a good Bobcats team. I'm very curious to see what the Bobcats do in that opener against A&M, an A&M team that I believe is finishing up its first season with a brand new coaching staff too. And this could be a really interesting regional. I don't think that it's quite to that level of intrigue as the Stillwater regional. I think Texas is still your prohibitive favorite in this one, but I think you have a very easy dark horse to see in Texas State.
Yeah, very much so. And a team in Texas State that won't be intimidated going into McCombs Field. They played there before. They played there probably every year, once or more. And so they'll come in and they won't be intimidated at all. And be fun to have A&M there, and then Seton Hall kind of jumps in the middle of that backyard brawl. But I think that'll be an interesting one to watch for sure. Again, Texas, what's their mindset going into this tournament? Their reaction showed they're not real excited about being a number 13 seed. So
right.
See if they can get excited at some point.
The Austin Regional paired with the Knoxville Regional for the Supers. That is number 4 Tennessee, Louisville, Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. The fourth and final team from the Big 12 into the field of 64, the Baylor Bears. They are in the Salt Lake City Regional, hosted by a surging Utah team. Utah, the 15th national seed. So what it seems like to me, and I want to get your thought, is Baylor was, I want to say 18, in between 15 and 18 in the RPI before the conference tournament started. When Utah made a run and won the Pac-12 tournament and Baylor was one and done in the Big 12 tournament, it almost seemed like the computers flipped them after those results. And that's why this is in Salt Lake City and not in Waco.
I think you're right. I think they jumped several people, with their run in the first ever, by the way, Pac-12 tournament and beating UCLA in the championship. So I think with that run, they jumped several people to get into a spot to host. Be interesting to see what their thoughts were, before the Pac-12 tournament. Did Utah even consider they had a chance to host? But here they are. So more power to them. And for Baylor, disappointed, yes, but again, we talked about it. Not a bad draw, really, to get out there. It's going to be tough in that regional, but I think Baylor's got a good chance if they can put everything together and get enough pitching. They're still down pitching wise, but if they can get enough there, they could come out of there and get to a super regional.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Brutal district. Some of these have a brutal regional. Some of the stuff on social media that the team talked about when we spoke with them earlier this week talked about the fact that this is one of the consensus 2 toughest regionals in the bracket. And yet both of us have said,
yeah,
not a bad draw. Is that stylistic for you? Because for me, swept 2 games against Tennessee. Didn't they split with A&M this season? Both of them in Waco, though. They've done well against good SEC competition. They have that win in February against Oklahoma. So stylistically, this Baylor team, which is very offensive centered when it's playing at its best, it's scoring lots of runs when it's winning. And whenever it's not winning, it's not scoring as many. Well, play the game a mile in the air against an SEC team that's very stylistically similar to the ones you've already seen, against a Pac-12 team that's very stylistically similar to some of the other teams that you've seen this season. I like Baylor's draw in this one. I'm curious. To me, this is a sport where you ride the hot hand, and Utah has the hot hand right now. Do I think this goes to a game 7? That, if necessary, game with it being double elimination? Absolutely. I really do. I think this is Utah and Baylor with a small gap between them and Ole Miss and Southern Illinois. But I'm inclined to lean Utah here strictly because we've seen teams get hot in the final series in the conference tournament and use that momentum and wind up in Oklahoma City. And the next thing you know, they're in the semifinals.
Yeah. And to me, a big question is, do we get the Baylor team that swept Texas? Do we get the Baylor team that lost 3 out of 4 this year to Iowa State? 2 different teams, and that's part of the inconsistency of Baylor this year. But they've shown they can play with and beat anybody.
Yeah.
And again, pitching will be a real key. We don't know about Dariana Orm going into this series, but Riley Crandall and Casey West pitched well. I mean, those were the 2 pitchers combined that beat Texas 3 straight games. So they've shown that they can do it. So, and Utah, to me, I wonder if, what's left for them, certainly more games, but they beat UCLA. They won the first ever Pac-12 tournament. That's big.
That's huge.
Do they have any trouble coming down from that to come back in and play somebody else in the NCAAs?
That's very true, and that's a very valid point. Very curious about this one. I think Stillwater's is still the most intriguing regional. I think this is a very close second there. Which pitching staff shows up? Is it like you said, the one that struggled against Iowa State, where it's just, you got to get one pitch here, and the next thing you know, it's up against the wall in right field. Interesting. This is very interesting. And a lot of the intrigue here is what, like you said, what Baylor team shows up. I think Oklahoma's the prohibitive favorite, though, to win the national championship in college softball in 2023.
Yeah, I don't know many people picking against them right now.
Almost like house money at that point.
Right, exactly.
Let's pivot to the other diamond in spring ball, because with a week left, the final series of the 2023 regular season begin tomorrow. Again, we're recording this early Wednesday afternoon. The 8-team Big 12 tournament is set. We just don't know seeding at this point. West Virginia has a 2-game lead on first place. Oklahoma State is in second with a 1-game lead on a tie between Texas and K-State. And Texas won the series, I believe. So that would be the Longhorns getting the tiebreaker. TCU coming in fifth at the moment at 11-10 with a 1-game lead on Texas Tech, who is in sixth. It is Oklahoma 7 due to a tiebreaker against Texas Tech. It is Kansas 8. Baylor, for the first time since the formation of the Big 12 Conference, will miss the Big 12 baseball tournament. Youth, we talked about how young this team was when the season started. Neither of us thought this team would miss the Big 12 tournament. I remember that from one of the last of the Big 12 breakdowns we did. And I'm trying to pull up a text from Baylor Baseball SID, Max Calderon, from before Baylor's game against Youngstown State, March 3rd. Entering the midweek game that led into that Youngstown State series, Baylor had 225 career at-bats on the roster, not in the lineup, on the roster. Three of its first four opponents: Central Michigan, 1,800 career at-bats; Duke, 1,500; UTSA, 1,600. Those were all entering their games against Baylor. Baylor had an average age of 20.2 years, Central Michigan 21.4, Duke 21.5, UTSA 21.7. Is this a case of we should have seen this coming, or is this a case of the conference was really old on 8 of its teams and really young on 1? Because I don't know which way I lean on it. I think I go back and forth.
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. They were picked last in the preseason. I didn't think Baylor would finish last. I thought Mitch Thompson would get the most out of these guys. And to be honest, I think he has. I think he's gotten the most out of them. It is a young team, but you think about a guy like Colby Branch, who is having a tremendous freshman year as shortstop for the Bears. But, the games this week to close the regular season are games, 53, 54, and 55 on the year. Yeah. That's a lot of baseball, and that's a lot on his shoulders, to put on the shoulders of a freshman. And it's not just him. There's some other young guys, but they just got, young sprinkled all over the roster, and really their key guys are young guys. So it's just been a lot to ask of them over the course of a long season. And, it's exciting to think about the future. It's really disappointing that they didn't find a way to make the Big 12 tournament this year, because Baylor and Oklahoma are the only 2 schools that have never missed the Big 12 tournament in the history of the Big 12. But but Baylor has this year. So Oklahoma is the only team that's never missed it. So that's disappointing, but still, I just know Mitch, and I know these coaches, and I have so much faith in them that this is, to me, going to be a 1-year blip. And man, it's exciting to think about what they're going to look like moving forward.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Mitch is awesome. I've known Mitch since I got to Channel 6. He was the head coach at MCC for my first 6 years here. He's an awesome dude, was always very friendly with us, and talking chalk with him in the dugout before practice at MCC. There are few people who know baseball the way that Mitch Thompson knows baseball. Yeah. Most of them are head coaches at the high collegiate or the professional level. This team is young. Colby Branch is going to be a star in the Big 12, and I would be shocked if he wasn't on the All Big 12 honors when those come out next week. It's going to be weird not being in Arlington covering the Big 12 tournament with this team, because you said, only 2 teams had never missed. And, this Baylor team, there's been some slogs of years in there, but they've never been in that 9th place category. They've never missed that tournament. And that's even back when only 6 teams made it. They expanded it. They expanded it, 5 years in, 3 years in. And so that's even more impressive to me. They snuck in last year. Sure. But this team, Colby Branch is going to be a star to the point where we've already seen other shortstops transfer out of the program because they can see, look, Colby's the dude. And his 3-year clock just started. And so we're on it was another true freshman. Colby's a true freshman. He's not going to play because Colby Branch is that guy. And if he can stay healthy, he can stay that guy. Kobe Andrade has had 3 vastly different roles in 3 seasons at Baylor. His role this year was not the same as it was the year before under Steve Rodriguez. his role in the 2 years under Steve Rodriguez were different from not only one another, but from this year as well. And so there's guys who have been on the roster, not many of them, who are finding completely new homes at this point. And so it's interesting to see what happens next year. It's interesting to see what happens in the portal this offseason. Mitch is really loyal to his guys. You can hear it with the way the players talk about him. And so if you can he got the job late. A lot of these college baseball coaching changes happen into conference tournament season, and the job at least opens up before the selection show. Steve Rodriguez resignation was formally announced by the school as the selection show was starting, right, not days before it. And so they got a late jump on it. Mitch got hired. I went on leave for my wedding on June 15th last year. I got married 2 days later. The first thing I saw on my phone before I turned off my email notifications was a press release that Mitch Thompson had been hired as the new head baseball coach. So you're talking about 2 weeks because he's in Grand Junction coaching MCC. They got a late jump. They have a full offseason this year. I think this Baylor team I agree with you. It's a blip on the radar. This is a good staff, and these are good players. They needed experience. They have that now. They got a win in Lubbock. That's tough. They got a series win against Oklahoma. They got a series win against Kansas State. Kansas State's a top 5 team in the Big 12 and flirting with an NCAA tournament bid at the moment. And so I think the Bears will be fine moving forward. I think it's just one. And I did a little bit of this Monday night on 6 News at 10. Look, yeah, you have every right to be frustrated. You know who's more frustrated than you? The guys in the dugout right now, because they know the streak is over as well.
Right. Yeah, it's eating them up. And when you hear any interview you hear with Mitch or any of the staff, they are so good about keeping things forward thinking, upbeat, positive. They're really good at that. But make no mistake, it is eating them up, like you said, inside, because those guys did a lot of winning when they were here. Mitch, when he was here as an assistant, and Jim Blair and Zach Dillon, when they were here as players, they won a lot. So that's going to be a fire that drives them pretty strong through the off season.
And we'll see if we can squeeze in some time to talk about the Big 12 baseball tournament once we know seedings next week. We've got 10 minutes left on the recording. John, realignment is going to end one day, I swear. But today is not that day. So It is May 17th of the year 2023. The Pac-12's current media deal expires as soon as the LA schools leave for the Big Ten next summer, June 30th. There is not a deal in place at the moment. We'll discuss that. Also, while that's happening over here, on this side of the country, the ACC, according to multiple reports earlier this week, now has its 7 arguably biggest brands in the league looking at their grants of rights, thinking about leaving, with one of those ADs explicitly saying he's terrified they're going to fall $30 million a year behind the Big Two with the SEC and the Big Ten. Which one do you think might be more impactful on the Big 12? And then I want to focus on the Pac-12.
Well, number one, what do they say? People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So we don't want to throw stones from a Big 12 school. But isn't it nice that the Big 12 is on such solid footing right now? People are kind of pointing toward Brett Yormark and toward the Big 12 as the model. Of course, the SEC and the Big 10, they've got big TV contracts, but the Big 12 has one themselves. And the Big 12 is on very solid footing, it appears, right now. And it's some other leagues that are really scrambling. We were in that boat not long ago, but the other leagues, Pac-12 and ACC, it appears, are kind of scrambling right now. So to answer your question, the words ring in my ears that Brett Yormark has said, go west, that he wants to go west. And that would lead you to think Pac-12 may be fertile ground for targeting out that way. Because if he wants the Big 12 to be truly a national brand and a national conference, you gotta go national. You gotta go coast to coast, and we're almost doing that. BYU is the furthest west right now, but certainly some big Pac-12 schools, if they become available, that would take you even further west.
If you had told me 2 years ago that of those three conferences, the Big 12 would be on the best footing 2 years later, I don't know that I would have believed you at that point, but that's where we are. I don't know what happens with the ACC. That deal is locked up for a long while. In fact, according to Dennis Dodd at CBS Sports, the new deals that were just inked by both the SEC and the Big Ten both expire before the current ACC deal does, which is long.
Yeah.
And so do I think it's bad that the Pac-12, I agree with you, the Pac-12 is the most impactful. That's why I want to focus there. But there's people who are talking on social media that the Pac-12's lack of a deal is going to be the death of the conference. And I don't know that I go that far, because I don't know that the value of a Pac-12 rights deal is vastly different than the value of without USC and UCLA, than the value of a Big 12 was without Texas and Oklahoma, because those are four blue blood programs that have been historic in the sport that are leaving their conferences. None of the other 8 have the history that those two did in the Big 12. None of the other 10 in the Pac-12, except maybe Oregon and Washington recently. If we're talking about $3 or $4 million a year, I don't know that you're going to get schools that are going to uproot and go across the country for that small, by college sports sense, amount of money. If you start talking about it starting at $10 million a year, then I think you start seeing some of these schools going, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that looks pretty good over there.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right there. And another key in my mind is how committed are they to each other? Like when the Big 12 news with Texas and Oklahoma came, I think one of the first thing that happened was, hey, the remaining schools, we've got to stick together. We can't splinter out. We can't fracture. Or if somebody splinters off, there's another leak in the dam. So how committed are the Pac-12 schools to each other, and how long can they hold strong together without somebody, crying uncle and saying, I got to go somewhere else. I got to go take this deal. I got to go to another conference to get their money rights.
And I think that's part of maybe why it's taking so long. You look at what's happened in the Pac-12. All of these athletic directors are giving interviews to all these reporters talking about their rights deals. Yeah. Oh, my deadline is this. My expectations are this. That didn't happen in the Big 12 whenever the sky started falling in July of 2021. Bob Bowlesby made it very clear, if we're going to survive this, we're going to survive it together.
Right.
And for all of his shortcomings that everybody seems to have with Bowlesby, he was remarkable during that 2-month stretch between Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC and bringing the 4 new members in. He was remarkable during that because he kept the other 8 schools together. And everybody understood, without our cash cows, without our blue bloods, we're going to take a hit financially. But if we bring these particular 4 schools in, we can lessen that and help them in the process. And so the Big 12 is a model for how to handle this. I don't think the ACC and the Pac-12 are, and I also don't think, though, it's going to directly lead to those conferences' demise.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely about Bob Bowlesby. That man deserves a ton of credit for keeping the schools together, and then for going out and brokering the deals to bring the 4 new schools in. That was Bob Bowlesby. So kudos to him. Brett Yormark has picked up the baton and run with it really, really well. But Bob Bowlesby should be on everybody's Christmas card list for what he did to salvage the Big 12.
He really should be. John, you enjoying the spring?
And you too. It's good to visit with you.
It's good to visit with you. Hopefully we can squeeze in some time next week now that I'm out of boxes. This is This has been a hectic spring. I appreciate you bearing with me. I appreciate all of you for bearing with me as well, whether you knew you were or not. But happy to be back on another Big 12 breakdown as we get set for the final postseason events of the academic year.
Thank you, Kurtis. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.